Hello, good tidings to all. Thank you for joining us here at the Agents of Aquarius, episode 24. Uh, Addendum from last week. Ides of March is the March 15th. It is not the first. We spoke incorrectly. So, right off the top, we make an edit and let you know we misspoke. We actually definitely were like, I'm not sure. And I
Yeah,
just,
brother, we knew that was a mistake in real time.
yes.
Go
So,
us.
but we didn't look it up. So I don't know why I'm telling you this right now, but we like to be on the up and up here. And the Ides of March now is March 15th in the Gregorian calendar. What does that even mean? I don't know. But we're here today, and I'm stoked to be here with you, my brother. I'm Jim Pine, and it's my man over here, my brother, Matty D. What's up?
Just freezing cold, man. The desert at night. It's a chilly place, I'm telling you.
It is.
But I'm
People,
layered
yeah.
up,
You'd
got my
never
still
think it.
suit on.
You'd never think it. You'd think, oh, it's probably not. It's probably like nice at night. It's like, no, the desert gets cold at night. That's what the desert's so like badass, dude. Desert because it can be so hot in the day and then still cold at night because it's like the sand can't hold all that heat. And it's just it's a magical place. Wow, quite the ramblings to start here. Well, I am on Epstein Island. I bought it. We're doing. I bought a bunch of sage. We think we're gonna clean everything up. It'll be good. We'll get back to you on that later. But we're gonna start today with a breaking news segment. Um, Let me key it up the audio here. Break the news. Beep, 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 beep. Boom. Nailed it. Okay, here's the usually okay. We look in Google, we see what the news is, and we either say interesting news and then tear that apart, or we just like look at this propaganda that's happening that's just completely off kilter.
And they do
Uh
make it easy for us too, because the news sucks that bad.
oh, it's like being the Drudge. It's so easy. It's so easy. We should use the Drudge report from now on. But
Why?
um,
Because they suck as much as everybody else.
yeah, because it used to be like a breaking news organization, and then they just somebody will buy it. They'll be like, "Well, you're talking to too many people," which is amazing that Joe Rogan seems to still be an outlaw doing his thing. Long live comedy. Long live stand-up comics, dude. They're the realest mofos on the planet. Shout out to Mr. Joe Rogan. Shout out Roseanne Barr. Shout out to Bill Hicks. I mean, these are
Shout out to our in-house comic, Mr. Jim Pine. Yeah, buddy.
George
Get your ass
Carlin.
on stage. Keep doing what you're doing.
Okay, so here's the breaking news. I had a comedy show last night with Casey Rocket at American Comedy Company in downtown San Diego. I went and had a beer after my set. And just sat alone in this great little Russian bar, headed to my car. I'm like, oh my god, I got a ticket. There's a ticket on my windshield. I paid my thing. Why is there a ticket? I get closer to the car and there's a baggie, and I'm like, what? And looking back, I'm like, why did I even open it? I should have went and got gloves out of my truck to open this thing and all. Just like, because it's weird. Now there's a baggie on my windshield with a note in it, which is like, okay, I find baggies in my front yard with rocks in them and then a landscaper's card. I was like, but what's this? And I'm like, all right, maybe somebody I know put that there, and it's to
Tell us,
send
Jim
me a
Pine.
message.
What
So
is this?
I open up the sandwich bag, and there's a it's like this, and then I open it up, and I'm like, what is this? I'm like, oh my, it's gonna be like a flyer for a nightclub. I'm like, this is expensive. No, also, I noticed before I take it, I look at the cars around me, none of them had this thing on it, and those cars were all there as long as my car had been there. Just another side note. So it's not on all the cards. It's a letter. Hold on, right there. It's a
There you
letter.
go.
So a typed letter with no paragraph. It's great. It's no paragraphs. It's just like a run-on sentence. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read part of it. You are now in extreme danger, and you must leave the United States as soon as possible, or you will die. At 8:10 a.m. on Monday, the 6th, May 2024, a world war will begin. Tens of millions of illegal aliens and other foreigners in the United States of America will receive text messages and recording messages in Mandarin, Cantonese, Arabic, Spanish, and other languages on their cell phones, telling them to kill Americans using any means they have, including shooting, stabbing, beating, arson, and running over with running over them with vehicles. Less than a day later, China will invade Taiwan by air and sea. North Korea tanks and foot soldiers will make their way across the border into South Korea. Syria will deploy 4 dirty bombs in its war against Israel and Russia will launch 2 missiles carrying nuclear warheads that will be detonated inside Ukraine and Poland. The governments of Spain, France, Greece, Egypt, Sudan, and South Africa will collapse, and those countries will go through a bloody civil wars. Less than 6 days after the war starts, the United States, Taiwan, South Korea, and Israel will surrender, and China, the global coordinator of the attacks, will become the world's dominant economic, social, political, and military power. Should I just keep reading?
I don't know. I just want you to know I'm pooping my pants right now, just thinking about it.
So
Pooping.
they're talking about death toll of 600 million, 2 billion displaced. It just goes on and on. It says America will be given to Mexico. America will be scattered across a number of surviving Americans will be scattered across the world, and America will be renamed and become Mexico's northern territory.
Oh,
After China
can I get
hands it
scattered to
over,
Indonesia, Bali, maybe?
sure, yeah, can I get scattered? Let's go. Okay, so this goes on and on. It ends with like a separate paragraph. It says, if you have questions or need international travel assistance, please speak to the security guard or other uniformed employees of the San Diego trolley at the Lemon Grove trolley stop, or call the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Bro, I love that last part about go accost this poor security guard at a trolley stop in Lemon Grove. That's about the best part of that entire letter, because it's like, I mean, let's say 1,000 of these got scattered around the city, which is a stretch, I know, but imagine if just like 2 or 3 people came up to the trolley guard like, hey man, what's up with the invasion? The poor guy wouldn't know what the hell's going on. Now, no, look, we're breaking this down for a reason,
Wait,
because this is awesome. So please continue. We're gonna get to our point, I promise, but
that's the note.
keep going.
That's the note. If you go on Instagram, I will post a copy of it, like in the stories. Or I'm sorry, not in the stories. I'll just post a copy of it when this drops, like of just the letter, so you can go look at it, read it, and so I picked this up last night. I was just blown away, like immediately, and I didn't get scared. It was like the more I read, I'm like, well, this is nonsense. This is crazy nonsense. But it's somebody with intelligence wrote this, but it's almost like AI wrote it, is what I think. It's like some like AI like somehow created this and then got a human to this crazy message, and then go see
Well,
a
yeah, I mean,
fucking
a
security
person
guard in
asked
Lemon
their
Grove.
AI, a person asked, Chat GPT, write me a scenario in 400 words about the Third World War and the collapse of America, or something like that. And then the machine kicks out a letter like that. But what was
With the
funny about
Lemon
it, what
Grove.
yeah, go to Lemon Grove. Maybe they added that part because their ex works there as a security guard. But what's funny is this news, like a lot of other news, it had its moment of shock factor where you're just like, whoa, what the fuck is it? Sorry, excuse me, I'm fussing again
Mm-hmm.
like a sailor. I'm trying not to. You read it the first time, you're like, what is this? What is this? And then as you think about it, rolled over in your head, its impact diminishes. But there's the initial shock value of it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because
It's
it's
such
trippy,
wild.
man. It's really far out.
So the reason we're doing break the news on this is because this is just like the same thing the news spews. It's like it's some AI generated crap that has no basis in reality, except the reality being created to basically um, misinform people. You watch the news and you almost know it's the opposite. It's like it's such a weird organism they've created, and it holds so much power. And it's only the power to distribute this media is only in limited hands. There's only like so many like actual owners of it, which that's very dangerous, of course, because then you lose into independent
Yeah, you
journalism.
have to thank Bill Clinton for that.
Thank you, Mr. Bill Clinton.
There used to be 50
See,
some major, giant corporate news agencies, 50 something in the 90s. And then he wrote some bill into effect. I forget what it's called, but he wrote some bill into effect, and now there's 6 mega corporations, where there used to be 54 different independently owned businesses that handle the majority of news in this country. Now there's only 6, and they all are part of the same club, the one that we're not in.
they're all in a club and you're not in it. I love George Carlin. And you ain't invited. So that's that. I mean, we know that's not breaking news. We did this kind of like almost a spoof because of like this is how crazy the news is. Like this could also just be a story somebody runs. Actually, somebody will call that into the news, and the news will do a story about that. And
Well,
it's
they
so
might do the story that someone is distributing misinformation.
yeah,
But what I do, I gotta credit you. I do like your assessment about the news. If you look at what their message is and just think the opposite, you're probably going to get it right most of the time.
it, and that sounds crazy, but what we really mean by that is like look at the news, and then take a step back. You've heard it now, then take a step back, and then be like, hmm, and that's it. That's what we mean. Look at or the opposite, because it's not obviously. What does that even mean? It's such a crazy idea. It just means hear the news, and then now that's when you critically think like, okay, what are they telling me the news, or is it, oh, it seems like these news sources would never tell you this. Like this is all missing. UFOs now. Like all of a sudden there's UFOs. Like yeah, we'll see.
Here, think about this in the most simple terms. When the news media comes out and says, "Hey, America, this war is justified," just turn that around 180 and you've got the actual message. It's another
Yes.
illegal invasion that's not going to do anything to benefit Americans. It's going to destroy some other country halfway across the globe. And the only people to benefit from it are the mega corporations that are multinational anyway. So
Yeah. I mean,
that's the point of look at it in the other direction. Just flip it 180 every time the news gives you their opinion. You'll probably be right.
yeah. I mean, we're currently in Ukraine, and I think the president just spoke about wants to give them more and more aid.
60 billion,
And
64 billion, something like that. You're going to solve
and
homelessness in this country 3 times over.
it's
Not for the um, um, not for all the migrants who are in the country right now, because that's a whole nother story. But for American citizen homeless, I think
mhm.
it's like 20, 25 billion. You could solve that problem for the
Okay.
ones who want it solved.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's so much you could do with it. You can't, so the problem with you can't solving homelessness is a whole different subject, because it sounds like you're just giving them all a home. We're talking about
No,
mentally ill
yeah.
people that need care.
And I'll give that credit to
Too.
Jimmy Dore because he
Yeah.
says that all the time. I listen to Dore, and that fact stuck in my head. But 20 billion bucks will do this, that, and the other.
Another
But anyway,
stand-up
thanks,
comic.
JD. But your point being, Biden had something to say about giving money to Ukraine, and it's like this is a just cause. It's like I bet you it's not. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not.
No, well, we've spoken before how dangerous that situation is, and then right now it's just becoming. It seems like pieces on the chessboard being moved, and Ukraine is just a piece in the chessboard of trying
Mhm.
to do some stuff to Russia. And it's like, why are we trying? Like Russia's calling for peace, and we're over here just like pissing off the bear. Like this is another sign of like that's not the way it's being presented. This is yours and I's editorial of this whole situation. We're just breaking it down as observers and not just being an Americans. And or it's like, no, we're trying to be like understand we've been led into a lot of wars. We've been dealing with a lot of situations where they just lie to us. They create this freaking bad news,
Mhm.
and you gotta like maybe this is being done by some dark force creates all that so that people aren't paying attention to some incredible awakening that's actually happened at the same time or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Shout out April 8th, equinox coming. Or I'm
April
sorry,
8th. That's the eclipse. Yeah, yeah, man.
eclipse coming, yeah.
Hey,
Um,
if I can also throw in there, we're not just going to break down exclusively things like Google News. We could break down news that we're inclined towards too, because there's a lot of bullshit that comes down the wire in in our world. Because I've heard so many times from the conspiracy community or the little conspiracy land out there that oh, America's going to be broken up into these 6 regions. Oh, the FEMA camps, and they got all these plastic boxes for bodies, and they're going to be you know, dumping everyone into FEMA camps. And then you hear those Q people not cursing. You hear the Q crowd is like, oh, mass arrests are coming. It's like, sure they are any day now. So there's a lot of fake news, BS news that comes out of conspiracy land too, and they're not immune to the laser eyes of the break the news segment of Agents of Aquarius. Break those fools down too, just like this letter. This is worth um just at the very least to point out, it's like, yeah, there's bogus news coming from every direction. And
Mhm.
what you're holding in your hand with these precise predictions, these countries are going to surrender in 6 days. That's going to happen on this date. It's like, give me a break. We've heard all that crap before. And whoever's spreading that little bit of propaganda, I'd love to know who it was. That'd be a fun conversation to have with that person.
It's some type of rebel rouser, I'm guessing. They dis distributed these pieces of paper, and who knows how many got them. I know one person got it. And this is where we're at, the current situation of the world. So this is why we do break the news, like you said. This is what's going on. Like Ukraine, dude, that's a 4-hour podcast, and you want to have experts come in and all that. Like, but we touch on things. We rub our hands across things. I mean, we're also right now, it seems to be, I believe I just heard we're sending troops, our own troops of sorts, to go over to the Gaza Israel area.
No
Not
kidding. I
only
haven't heard that.
ships, it's
I mean, we got a lot of
I
military
didn't look
over
into
there,
this. Yeah, I mean, there are already
but
people there, but it sounded like boots on ground. But I'm not that's not the important part. The important part is like this whole conflict that's happening in Gaza, where there was Palestinians, and then they were displaced, so the state of Israel could be started in 1948, which was basically done by United Nations, I believe,
US and Britain.
US and Britain. And we've literally already talked about all this, but here we are. This is more break news. This isn't what you think it is. This isn't about um Israel's like, oh, Israel's been attacked. It's like, this is a volatile place where people were displaced, so you could put other people where other people already were,
Yeah.
which that's never going to make anybody happy. You're creating an enemy right there, and it's not that long ago. It's only about 70 years ago that this happened, or
Well, the
65 or
the
whatever.
I've heard Benjamin Netanyahu say flat out no one was living there at the time that the late 1800s when Zionists started to show up there, this, that, and the other. But makes me wonder. It's like, didn't the British keep census numbers? Didn't the Ottoman Empire keep census numbers? I think it'd be pretty easy to confirm that people did live there. Although outside of Israel apologists, I believe the general consensus is a bunch of people lived in Palestine. And then in the late 1800s, the Zionist movement started to send people from Europe into that area to get land. And then with the Balfour Declaration that from England that basically gave the green light for Israel, come 1948 when they made that country, yeah, there was, like you said, there's a bunch of people that were already there, and you wonder why. It's like, why is it so volatile? You said it, Jimmy. You said it exactly. It's like they're displacing one group so another group can go live there. And what do you think's going to happen? You think they're just gonna be like, oh yeah, my family's been here for 8 generations, but you could have my house? Of course not.
I can't. It's such a weird thing that the United States would even participate in something like that. The United States has this extremely long history of never displacing any native people from their
Jeez.
land.
I was wondering where you're going with that one. It's like, it's weird the US is doing this. Yeah, the US is great at displacing
Oh,
people. And I've heard, Israeli politicians basically say, hey, you guys did it, so why are you complaining about us doing it? But you know what? We are complaining about that situation.
we're bringing it up at the very least, and there's a genocide happening there, and they try to make it's a very volatile situation. It's a very they make it a very divisive situation, and they make it sound like you're an anti-Semite if you don't back Israel, which is really weird, because this isn't I've heard, this isn't about Jews. This isn't about even Israel. This is about the Zionists that have, and we've talked about it in the podcast already. But it's about the Zionist and the Zionism that's there, that bleeds out of this like protected group apparently, and then they're made the victim once again. Like, oh, we're victims to these people that are fighting back for their lives while they're being starved to death.
Yeah.
We'll create Hamas so that we can control that and then have this controlled opposition and go. You just go because you know so much
Hey,
more than I do.
let's make sure we're clear on our terms. We'll play the little phone game, but we'll do this one because you said the bad G word. Define genocide. And let's just see what we're talking about. The deliberate killing of a large number of people. Whoops, stop that phone. Oh, where'd it go? Oh no, this is important. Define genocide. Define genocide.
Well, I think you just
Here you go.
said killing of
All right,
large.
the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. So yes, a large number of people have been killed, and yes, it does appear that the intention is to destroy that group.
Yeah.
So so it's the right word by definition, but I think Americans, because of our education, because of our propaganda we've been subjected to, we're always thinking like a genocide has to be march them into the camp and murder them, as opposed to drop bombs, destroy every house in the city, force them into a small section of the South, and then starve them to death. And don't forget to cut off their water so that there's no clean drinking water. So, um, two things I want to preface with real quick because we haven't got deep into this whole Israel thing before. One, I think the situation is really, really simple, as you've very well explained already, and that it only gets complicated because someone who's trying to obfuscate the truth wants it to be complicated so that you can't figure out what's really going on. I think the whole situation is super simple. The other thing is there's a reason we haven't brought this up before, because there's so much propaganda that gets dumped onto this topic because it's such a hot topic. And quite frankly, I think APAC, that the big lobby for Israel, I'm pretty sure they just own our legislators the same way the big corporations own our legislators. So it's hard to get a politician to say a straight line on this whole Palestine issue. And then the media, they have their own perspective of spinning this story, because it's always like a Palestinian died during the operation in Gaza. And then when it's the other way, it's like terrorists murder people in kibbutz. Like just the way they speak about it is very, very manipulative. But it shows their hand that they clearly have chosen a side. So again, part of the reason we haven't got into this is because there's so much propaganda that gets dumped onto this. And it helps to wait a while before jumping into this particular topic, because there have been so many lies now that are exposed as lies. The big one early on was 8 babies beheaded. Well, there's an Israeli newspaper called Haaretz that printed the entire list of the dead from that day and their ages. And there was one infant who was on that list. And that poor child was caught in a crossfire of machine guns between this side and that side. And it just goes to show you that really popular thing about the 8 beheaded babies, that was all propaganda. That was just made up. And one story after another has been made up. And as if you try to square up against that on day one, people are going to lose their mind, because all they could think about, like when you read that letter the first time and it had shock value when you read the letter in your car. Well, when they hear this thing about the babies for the first time, it has shock value, and you tend to lean into it a little bit. But now that time has gone by, you could start to talk about the reality of the situation on the ground and the simplicity of the situation. And and the shock value of a lot of these really big egregious lies is already worn off, so you could actually have a conversation without someone losing their head.
I mean, it's kind of hard. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely way different than beginning. The same as when everybody put Ukraine flags out. It was like people didn't even know why they were doing it. People were hanging Ukrainian flags. They didn't even know why they were doing it. That's how the propaganda works. It was all of a sudden they're everywhere. We watched it. The same thing happen with the Cupid. We saw it with George Floyd. You just watch these moments where you're like, oh, this is obviously being directed by by some control. Like there's some control to what's happening here. This isn't like all naturally happening. This isn't an organic
Someone
situation.
shaping the narrative. They're trying to get you to
Oh
believe,
yeah.
to think a certain way.
Yeah, well, when you control the news outlets, then I mean, Amy Roebuck is on the a live mic on NBC speaking about how she had the whole Epstein story in 2016, and they crushed it and got rid of it because they said nobody cares about that. And well, also the royal family said we can't cover the wedding of William and Kate if we run this story. So, and it's like, oh my God. So you want to put on some tabloid crap on your news network because you know that'll just keep the people like, you know,
Keeps them
um,
fascinated with the royal family, which is a giant expense on the people of the UK. Keeps them distracted. Keeps them entertained by shit that doesn't affect their lives. It does all kinds of things.
yeah, think about like we literally separated ourselves from England, like, like so we wouldn't care about their king
Over
and the
those people,
queen.
over their royal, their monarchy. We separated
Yes.
ourselves from them because of their monarchy. Now we're all so into it.
But it's great because we don't people don't just listen to the news anymore. Now we know that the royals that it was Queen Elizabeth and oh they're the royals. So it makes you think they're these English people. No, no, they were Germans. They're the Saxe-Coburgs, the Warhammer, the Warburgs, I believe. They come from a whole different lineage and just were brought in at some point in time to go into this monarchy that really it's just all flashed in our they flashed it all in our face. And meanwhile, uh that's what we're here doing. We're hopefully here to destroy these narratives, to break these things apart. Hysterically, just could you imagine the United States displacing NATO? Like, yeah, that's what this colony, like what this nation eventually turned into that idea.
Yeah, and just because this nation genocided the Native Americans of North America doesn't mean Israel gets a pass and gets to genocide the Palestinians in Palestine or Israel, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it is Israel now. It used to be Palestine, but it doesn't mean just because this nation did what it did that we have to stand by and allow some other nation to do the same thing, because I am pretty sure that there were a lot of conscientious objectors to what the United States military and settlers and all that were doing to the Native Americans. Would have been harder to get everyone to understand because communication was so slow. Now, Israel, you live in a different world, bro. It's everyone knows what's going on. You could pick up your phone. Every day I open Instagram, there's some kid who's been blown up. There's some person who's been crushed under a building. There's, these horrible things that happen constantly. And there's this justification of, yeah, but they attacked us. It's like, all right, you know what? They did attack you. I understand that. And it sucks. And a lot of shit that goes on in the world sucks. But since something like 2006 or 2007, the Gaza Strip has been a closed territory. You can't go in and out. Those 2.5 million people that live there weren't allowed to leave. And you keep 2.5 million people locked up in a small space for 17 years. What do you think's going to happen? Something awful. Something awful was going to happen. And when something awful did happen, there's a whole lot of logic that says Israel knew it was coming because they have really strong intelligence all over that region. And the people who have previously worked in the IDF, served in the IDF, who worked in that border, I have seen former border military personnel talk about how, a flea can't get across that line without them knowing about it. But I watched a giant tractor roll up and push a fence out of the way as if you can't shoot that thing down. We watched, all these groups in the middle of the daylight walk across that border. It's like there's some stinky false flag stuff going on there. I know that's a hot topic too, but tell me how the IDF couldn't react for a couple hours while this was all happening when previously for 17 years they kept everybody in there. And then all of a sudden they just get out and have this massive attack. This is the world knows that you and I see 9/11 as an inside job. That's our country. That's our nation. That's our leaders. So it's not like I'm saying something taboo I won't say about my own country, but that country, Israel, I got a feeling that They knew this shit was coming. They knew it was going to happen, and they let it happen because what they really want to do is just displace all the Palestinians and get them out of their country, what they think is their country. I think they want those people exactly where they are, pressed up against the border, desperate, starving, dying, and they're going to get rid of it. They're going to handle the Palestinian problem, so to speak. And we're all watching it live. And because we're all watching it live, it it's not going to end well for Israel because the whole world is watching this stuff. And even though the U.S. government is all gung ho, and Biden has circumvened Congress and sent 100 different arms shipments to that country, and we're giving them billions of dollars in arms, and we're giving them the bombs to kill people with. In spite of the fact that our government's complicit, the world is not complicit, and the world's not cool with this stuff. And I think it's going to end very poorly for Israel because look what happened to South Africa.
Well, the look for Israel may end poorly, but the truth is it's going to end poorly for the Palestinians probably.
100% before it ever
And
ends poorly for
yeah,
anyone else.
yeah, the Israelis are just going to have egg on their face. So like, oh, but then what happens is, Matt, the winners of it write the history, and then they just make the history different, and then people at 100 years from now would possibly never know what was really happening there, but only know that thank God Israel was the victor because of this thing happening. Or maybe they get also taken out in this World War III that's happening, but it's already happening, first of all.
Well, brother, I do want to say in the United States, what they did to the Native Americans, we rewrote that history, and the real history is still there. In this case, the rest of the world is writing history at the same time Israel is, because we all see it on our phone every day. And we kind of have an idea of what's going on in this conflict. So they'll have more than egg on their face, because there came a point where South Africa was over. And in this case, Israel can't have the Palestinians as equal citizens. It's just not possible. There's 7 million Palestinians and 7 million Israeli Jews. And if you have fair and equal representation in that government, half the government is now Palestinian. They have to have an apartheid state for it to be an Israeli Jewish state. You just can't have it any other way. And that's the dirty secret that's come out in all this. Like, that's what people are coming to realize, that this actually is an apartheid state, because there actually are two classes of citizens. And that's what South Africa was. There were two classes of citizens, and the world got fed up with it. So they started to do that, boycotts and sanctions, and people stopped buying stuff, and people stopped vacationing in South Africa. They broke their economy first. So
I get it. I love us having the debate of it all, because we're just basically saying, okay, this isn't proper what's going on. But the son and grandson of a dude who was funding the Nazis during World War II, his son and grandson went on to become presidents of the United States. So let's remember, the history does get rewritten. Will they be used as a pawn? And then, I mean, because in 100 years, if we keep heading in the direction that the people that seem to keep creating these narratives head, it won't matter, because we'll have one world government and everything will be, it'll be all so incredible. And it won't matter, the history we won't be able to speak of it. It'll be like, that's thought crime. And
no, that's a good point. And what you're talking about, Herbert Walker Bush and his son-in-law,
Preston Bush.
Prescott Bush and George Herbert Walker. So George Herbert Walker and his son-in-law Prescott Bush, they worked for banks like Union Banking Corporation and Brown Brothers Harriman, and they were funding that Nazi regime in the 30s and feeding it money. And then later, a guy named George Herbert Walker Bush becomes president, and he talks all day long about the New World Order. The New World Order. I remember watching that guy live on TV saying that stuff. And you wonder why we're conspiracy theorists. It's because, but I'm looking at it all. I'm looking at the big picture. We see it.
Well, we know why we're called conspiracy theorists, because the CIA knew people were going to question the JFK assassination, and the Warren report that had just come out, or Warren Commission, whatever had come out, and they said, well, we got to create, and they said they created a word called conspiracy theorists to discount these people. And look today, all we're doing is pointing out the new JFKs, the new these moments where it's like, whoa, 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 this is not organic. There's some other hand at work. There's a hidden hand moving the pieces around the board right now. And that's why we're here. We are the agents. We are and it sounds, but we're trying to create agency and have a group of people that can keep asking questions, wonder why, what's going on here, like, because we do understand now governments will lie to you and do horrible things. It's happening now in the world. It's happened in the world for a while, and we can't just do that. Well, that's the way it's been. No, I'd like to have my children in a world that can be different than that, in a world that people can we can have justice and have actual law and not have two-tiered law system. That's what we're here to fight for. It's like, why are we here? This just seems like such a waste. Like what? It's so we can talk about this instead of just me and you having a conversation. We have a conversation that other people can now hear, and hopefully that moves the needle a little bit. We talk about meditation and how people can, when they come together, they can inspire and create like a greater reality than what was presently there just by these vibrations connecting. And that's why we're here, because we're hoping this will vibrate and vibrate more and more to whatever keeps a good resonance, and that resonance can scream truth, and the truth for all, not truth for simply just like what's good for me.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's get out of the Kali Yuga. Let's get into the Age of Aquarius. Let's get into the Dwapara Yuga. Um, yeah, we might just be the lucky ones who were born in such a time where we actually do transition into a world where people are more aware of what's actually going on, where they're not susceptible to propaganda, where we could actually think for ourselves and think collectively for our own good instead of being told what to think to benefit a very small amount of people. Let's go
Okay,
ahead and do that.
let's do that, because propaganda is legal. They were doing it anyway, but then they're like, why don't we just make it legal too? And
Isn't
then
that
the
funny?
government, yeah,
What took them so long? It took until 2012 for them to
I
make it
don't,
legal.
because they done studies and they did groups and sessions, and they learned you gotta take this long before you can actually just put that in front of people, that you're going to be like, yeah, and the government can do propaganda against you, and you're like, and somehow that doesn't create a 10 million man march, like that's wild. Like the very thought of that, what are these guys talking about?
Well,
The Fifth
because no one knows
Remodernization Act,
about it.
that's the
Yeah, go ahead,
difference.
take a second. Can you please do that and
I am.
rip into it?
We talk about it before, but we're talking about our government that we pay taxes to, that then just prints money and it spends recklessly. They also can then spend some of that money and do propaganda against the United States citizens, their own citizens. They can do it through the Smith-Mundt Remodernization Act, or Modernization Act, which allows them the government to do propaganda on its own people. It's sickening, but that happened in 2013. It was a presidential executive order created, and that's the way it goes. We get to live with propaganda from your own government. What does that mean, Jim? It means you better pay attention, because they don't have our best interest, unfortunately. America is a wonderful idea. America is filled with wonderful people. America also has a capitalist system that is like out of control and has greed at it's race car in the red pin greed. And that creates our government getting taken over by that greed. So money gets into the government, the propaganda, they're just steering us in a certain direction, and we all need to be the free citizens that were born on this rock spinning through space, as they tell us. Nobody owns you. Nobody owns you. You're a living person. If you're listening to this, you're definitely a living person, because you're not just some you're a mindless zombie going through it and just being like, you're here and you're questioning it, and that's a good thing, and that's what the agents are about.
That is what the agents are about. I mean, we're just a small voice. It's these two knuckleheads sitting in two different garages trying to share this. Now imagine this scenario. Imagine you had a mega corporation that had in its one of its departments a news channel that came out as an authoritative figure in the 5 o'clock news, and someone said, "Hey, we'd like to do our public service announcement for the day. We're going to go back to the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 and look at this section and that section." And this is what they did. They did it because back in 1947, they wrote the Smith-Mundt Act to protect you from this. Imagine if an organization with authority that could speak with authority took the time to actually speak something relevant instead of Kate and William are getting married. That's kind of what people need right now, is an authority figure to come out and let them know what's going on with the world, because that's who people are inclined to trust. It's that spell that we're doing our little part to break. That's what, again, another one of these little mission statements. That's what we're here doing, is break that spell. So you don't need to wait for the 5 o'clock news to tell you what's going on in the world. You need to kind of find out yourself, and you can, because it's all out there. If the two of us can do it, anyone can do it. Because tell me something, Bud, what's the highest level of education you and I have acquired between the two of us?
High school.
Hey, sell me short. I had 2.5 semesters of community college, bud. And
Okay.
I
I
spent a lot of time
also,
playing pool. But yeah, it's two people with a high school education.
I
It's
mean, we
two people with
both
a high school
dabbled.
education.
Um, yeah, but well, that shows you right there that the education, we've somehow figured out to get to this moment and still looking into the obscure and looking at the shadows, which isn't easy to find, but it's gotten easier. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the future because we hold the future. You know, we don't have to just go along with this nonsense. And I want to keep it like actually on the breaking news moment, because this just happened and it's been happening for like 2 weeks now. And it all started with this. There's a professional boxer named Ryan Garcia, and he's been having like a meltdown on the internet, or is what appears to be.
Ryan went, yeah, tell me more, please.
He's like been having a meltdown. It's like kind of about women like 2 weeks ago, and I was just like, what's going on? This guy's like, his Instagram is so clean, right? It's so clean. And then he starts posting about like women. He just broke up with his girl, but then he's got a new girl and says queen. It's like starts getting crazy. Like he's just like,
Hey, is he a good boxer? Is he very well known in the
oh
boxing
yeah,
community, in the sports world? Because
yeah.
it took him going crazy till I learned who this guy was, that he
Uh,
existed on the earth.
if you watch boxing, you know who he is, because he's
Okay.
like he's a young up and comer. He's lightning fast, power. He's very exciting. He's good for the sport. He makes hundreds and hundreds. He's probably made $100 million already.
Oh, big money.
So he's having like meltdowns, and then it turns quickly within like a couple days of this women's stuff, and then it turns quickly of like he starts going conspiracy guy. He starts talking about Bohemian Grove and that he had. I'm not going to say the word, but the R like R asterisk PE, like he was forced to watch kids being like and he starts talking about all this stuff out of nowhere, and
Yeah,
then
he
it's like,
said they tied me down and made me watch
yeah,
what they were doing to children
yeah,
at
exactly.
at the Bohemian Grove. Is that what we?
I'm not sure, dude. It's all
I'm pretty
very,
sure he dropped Bohemian Grove.
it's
I'm
all
pretty sure
very
he did.
partial. It's very partial, all of it.
Mhm.
And then it just keeps like, then he's like, he's on Twitter also. He's just dropping everything. He's dropping videos. He's dropping tech or whatever, threads, messages, whatever you want to say, and just like Bohemian Grove. I know what's really going on. He's also proclaiming Jesus the whole time, and he doesn't care. He's being told like what he's saying is really dangerous. You can't be saying this stuff. Andrew
Wait,
Tate's like,
I'm sorry.
dude,
Did he say he is Jesus, or that he's
no.
hearing Jesus?
He Jesus is a savior. Like he can't. It
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
matter. They can't kill him because Jesus is the savior. Like,
Oh, okay. He's invoking some protection.
oh, he keeps doing that also, and like, but he's doing this in like this crazy like person having a meltdown. Is like maybe on a drug binge or something, and he's like also doing this whole Jesus thing's happening, and Andrew Tate speaking out and like, yo, dog, like if you talk like that, they'll take care of you. He's like, I don't want to go back to jail. Ryan's then like, that's where he's invoking Jesus, and then he like goes off the reservation completely, and then he does a video coming back where he's like, and it looks like gun to head, like he's like, with like, I think he has a crown on his head too, and he's just like,
He has like what those Roman
yeah,
guys wear, where it's like a thing of golden leaves
yeah,
in a
around his
circlet
head,
around his head,
and he's sitting on the couch at home, and
wearing
or
all white.
couch, yeah, and he's like, do you remember his exact words on that? I'm like,
I'll paraphrase. He was just like, I'm only going to post things about boxing. We're going to talk about sports. We're going to talk about none of that stuff I was saying before. I'm just going to focus on my career, and don't worry about all that. And you can be sure the gun was like, not here. It was just right there. It was like just off camera. It was like, wow, that's, for all you said in the last 2 weeks, that's a pretty big turnaround you just did there. Did someone, now look, someone spoke to him, obviously. It might have been his mom or his manager. It might have been someone who was at the Bohemian Grove who cut off his little toe. I have no idea, but he
Well,
sure did an about face. I know that much.
he also kept like saying, and he's like, I've lost all my cards, are all locked up, like all of his, like, he doesn't have any way to get money.
Oh.
His phone and everything's been taken from him. He's saying
Wait,
stuff
you're
like
saying
that.
he was at the Canadian trucker protest? They locked up his bank accounts and froze the credit cards?
Good callback. um so yeah, so he's like, he's being like controlled, and he's like, he's not allowed to say what he's saying, but he's saying it, and oh, Jesus is going to protect me. It's like this whirlwind you can read and watch. It's like, what is going on?
Oh
Because
God, he's
I'm
going to
not
be the
saying that,
Britney Spears of boxing. His
who
dad's going to manage
knows,
his career and keep him locked in his house until they let him out into a ring to fight somebody.
but what if you were forced to watch a snuff film live? Maybe that would make you have a freak out moment where you just start seeing, and then almost you start to see through the world, like Roddy Piper and They Live, or what, I think that's the name of the
It
movie.
is. They Live
and
is the
and
movie. Yeah.
uh you now see the world differently, and that's maybe why he's freaking out. He might be having a CTE meltdown. He's a boxer. He's been punched before. He's
Yeah.
been knocked down.
But also we know that MK Ultra is trauma-based mind control. And maybe this guy was scooped up by the CIA and messed with and drugged up and hurt, and who knows what's going on, because you know what the reality is, this stuff actually does happen. This is the world that we live in. The CIA did a program called MK Ultra. It was trauma-based mind control, and they used a lot of drugs to make people susceptible to the influences that they were pushing on them. And that really happened. And that was exposed back in the 70s by Senator Frank Church, who had what was now known as the Church Committee. Like, this stuff is all out there. MK Ultra really happened. And at the time, during the Church Committee, the CIA said, "Hey, we're sorry. We're not going to do that anymore. It's cool." And anyone who believes that, I got a bridge to sell you. If you're ready, just get me a check. But this stuff is what is in our world. And is Ryan Garcia just some guy who did a bunch of PCP and lost his, what? Or is there something bigger going on? I don't know, but I do know that there's that what I'm being told by any mainstream media that even dares to report on this thing, it's probably going to be 180 degrees different from what they're saying.
What is it? This is like so wild. This is a great, this whole broadcast. I mean, we're kind of just breaking the news of the whole podcast anyway. It's just such an interesting situation. The social witnessing of this guy having a meltdown, who's he's a huge star in boxing, and it just also is like, is this all? So the way I look at it is like, okay, Jim, let's wrap it up. All right, let's not be fun. The way I look at it is, I don't know if the whole thing's not staged. Is this all publicity stunt? Is this is it staged? Is this really happening? Because it doesn't mean this or that. We try to always speak here, and like, you got to go outside the box. It's, what is this? What is happening? Did some form of this happen? Is he just having a psychotic meltdown, and none of the stuff is real at all? I'm not sure. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm not sure. From our studies and it seems like the truth keeps skipping its way through, even when you control people and threaten them and threaten their families and you threaten their lives and you threaten it all. The truth keeps skipping on through. Is this kid just invoking the name, the power of Jesus to save him, even though he knows he could be taken out? I mean, he's doing the whole I'm not suicidal. I would never try to hurt myself. He's doing all of he's Isaac Cappy plus Andrew Breitbart plus I'm trying to think somebody that's really lost it lately.
Gary,
Andrew I was Jones,
uh,
Andrew Jones, not Andrew Jones, Alex Jones. It's like
yeah.
he's like all this like thing wrapped up in the one. It's like, what is going on here? That this is like crazy to me, this whole thing. And I'm really captivated by it. Not that I'm like it, because this is what we do. We look and wonder. I'm like, what does this signal mean? Is this a synchronicity? Is this truth coming to light? Because we're in the entering the age of Aquarius, we're entering this age of new time. We're leaving the time of this darkness, the Kali Yuga, the
Hmm.
death. Are we leaving that behind? Is this what's happening? People don't care. They're just going to come out. Whistleblowers come out. Andrew Assange comes out. Snowden comes out. These people are risking their lives and their safety and security so
And
they
pay for
can,
it.
yeah, and so they could speak to the truth. Is that what's happening? I don't know. I don't know, but it's interesting to watch because it's on the public stage. This isn't like, oh, Jim just kind of knows and nobody else does. It's a big deal.
Well, bro, I absolutely think that. No, I can't say absolutely because that's we know better. But maybe all the stuff he's saying he was never supposed to say. Maybe he was going to be used by the powerful as a mouthpiece for whatever agendas they have, and maybe they sick their CIA dogs on him or whatever private organization runs those programs now. And this guy actually was subjected to an attempt at trauma-based mind control to get him to be a tool for powerful people to push an agenda that serves them. And maybe it blew up. Maybe it didn't work on this guy. Maybe that's another one of those like we're coming out of the Kali Yuga and this stuff doesn't work so well anymore. Um, but this could be a great sign of an operation that went wrong because look, I already said it. The CIA said, sorry, we're not going to do MK Ultra anymore. But the reality is they don't really have to confess or talk or get prosecuted because in the 1947 National Security Act, when the CIA was created, it was written into that act that the CIA will police itself. No one can pull them into court, which is why you've never seen them pulled into court. This is written into their charter. They police themselves. No one can police them. And when they say we're going to stop that MK Ultra, we're going to stop Operation Mockingbird, we're going to stop all these horrible things we do to Americans, they didn't have to because there's no one who can hold them accountable. So yes, they have continued with these programs. Yes, they do horrible things. Yes, the assassins who kill people overseas, they kill people here too. And this guy really might be an operation gone wrong. The trauma-based mind control that is MK Ultra might not have stuck with this guy, and he lost it. And it would make sense that he lost it so fantastically and he was all over the place because he went through a trauma-based mind control episode. Someone hurt this guy. And if what he says is true and he had to witness the R blank PE of a child, you think he's not going to be hurt? Of course he is. He's gonna be a mess. And whatever brought him to that little white clothing on the couch with your gold crown on your head moment where he said, yeah, I'm just going to focus on boxing. I don't know what got him there. I have no idea. It could be that he did just, smoke a bunch of PCP and lose it that way. But it could be something else because the something else, it's here. It exists. It's your world, people. If you're listening to this, that's the world you live in. It has those elements. You'll probably never have to go face to face with those elements because it's a big country with 335 million people or something. But these organizations are working against you, just like they're allowed to do propaganda against you. they're out there. So
Yeah, it's legal. It's fair trade. I would, yeah, who knows? And once again, we're just breaking the news on it. We're just talking about it, going, what is going on here? Like, what is happening? Let's not just go with the narrative. Let's not just go the reverse narrative. Like, what is it? We're not sure. So we're like, yeah, we just said these things that going on with this story with Ryan Garcia. But the truth of the matter is, this is always, we just told you how they're allowed to do propaganda. That's what news is. News is where you spread the propaganda. This is where you create ideas and narratives and you push people in directions and they generally don't even know it's happening. We're talking about it though. This is how you break free from propaganda, is knowing that there's propaganda happening, and then you can pay attention and then look around it and then be a critical thinker. And then you're like, I can take this part of the reality apart. I don't have to just take what they're giving me as like, oh yeah, this is the truth. No, we're here on episode 24. We repeat ourselves a lot on certain things because they're worth repeating, because they're a link in the chain of trying to understand what is happening. What is happening in this reality? What's going on? There's weird powers that be on a higher level that are trying to do weird things that are very inhumane and not cool at all. Not to be like, hey dude, but that's it. Like there's some just, but we're here once again and we're fighting back and we can take care of this.
here we go.